Abraham, Isaac and Jacob were the forefathers of the Israelite peoples, of the Israelite tribes. Jacob was renamed Israel. Jacob had 12 sons. These were the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. One of the ancestors, Joseph, one of the ancestors of the 12 tribes was named Joseph. Joseph had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, each of which became tribes in their own right. These were in some ways the most important tribes of the Israelite nation. And sometimes the northern section is referred to as Ephraim, after the leading tribe Ephraim. So you had these 12 tribes. These 12 tribes went down to Egypt. In Egypt they increased and multiplied, and then they were oppressed by the Egyptians. Moses delivered them from Egypt, took them out of Egypt. They wandered through the wilderness for 40 years. In the wilderness they received the Torah, received the Bible, the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible. And from there they went on to conquer the land of Canaan, and they divided the land of Canaan from the Nile to the Euphrates. They divided it up into 12 different sections, 1 section for each tribe. Then you had a period of adjustment, a period of the judges, and then it was followed by the first King Saul from the tribe of Benjamin. He was followed by King David from the tribe of Judah. After David came Solomon, his son. After Solomon came his son Rehoboam the son of Solomon. And in his reign, 10 of these 12 tribes separated. They set up their own kingdom referred to as Israel, the kingdom of Israel, as juxtaposed to the kingdom of Judah in the south, and also known occasionally as Joseph, or as Samaria, Shomron, or as Ephraim. It depends upon the context. And this kingdom, was comprised of 10 tribes, and these 10 tribes, about 100 years after the separation, were conquered by the Assyrians. Before being conquered, they had begun to become pagans. They had stopped practicing circumcision. They had stopped going up to pilgrimage to Jerusalem. They had almost stopped keeping the Torah altogether. There's nothing Israelite in the religious sense much left of it to them. They had created some type of syncretic creed, some syncretic religion, taking aspects of the Canaanite practices and combining them with their own Israelite laws, their own Israelite traditions, and inventing a few of their own. Had their own synthesis, one could say, between Judaism, what we know as ancient Judaism, and the Canaanite religion. And for that they were condemned in the book of Kings, second book of Kings, chapter 17. He describes it in detail. And why is this important? Because we find aspects of this religion later. We find it in the West. When they went to the West, they continued to practice this religion. And it was very similar to Druidism. And in fact, Druidism, that is, of the people in the West, they practiced the Druid religion, was derived from ancient Israelite and Canaanite customs of the 10 tribes had adopted. So these 10 tribes were captured by the Assyrians, taken into exile. They disappeared. And they disappeared. That is, they moved around. Eventually they moved to Western Europe and the British Isles, and they moved in several different pathways, major pathways of migration. One of them was by way of the sea. At that time, the Assyrians were both at the height of their power, and they were also possibly undergoing a crisis of some sorts, and they were re-establishing themselves, or attempting to stabilise themselves by taking over economic resources in the West and possibly planting colonies in the west. At all events, we can tell you what we know and what is recorded. A section of the Israelite captives from the 10 tribes were taken away in ships, Phoenician ships. The Phoenicians were people centered in Lebanon and the cities of Tyre and Sidon, but also in other places along the coast of Syria. Also North Africa and Carthage, what became known as Carthage, and other areas. And they had a whole maritime empire, a whole complex of colonies and connections. And so too we had the Philistines. The Philistines were more in the south, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gaza, all that area. There were major Philistine cities. And the Philistines apparently also were quite active on the sea and seafaring trades. They identified archaeology in archaeological terms with Mycenean, that is Greek, ancient Greek, and Minoan, that is from ancient Crete culture, because they had aspects of both areas, and their ships were similar to theirs, and also on Cyprus, and they had quite a far-reaching expansion of their own. And the indications are that the Assyrians used Phoenicians as proxies to establish colonies in the west, and they also used Philistines to establish these proxies, and they seem to have done this in combination with Edom. The Edomites were to the south of Judah. They had what later became known as Idumea, their own little conclave, their own little country. But in addition to that, they had the cliques, ruling cliques or groups throughout the Middle East of military colonies in these areas, and they appear to have been placed in direction of the Philistine and the Phoenician colonists that were working on behalf of Assyria to expand Assyria's reach all over the known world. And this reach extended throughout the Mediterranean and also reached up into the Atlantic Ocean, the North Sea. It reached across the seas to Britain and probably also to Ireland and to Scandinavia. Now all this was taking place about the time the Israelites were being exiled, or possibly the exile of the Israelites preceded it somewhat. It was almost taking place at the same time, and there were other events that were taking place. And these, what we're telling you now, is archaeological sources, the suggestions of archaeological mainstream researchers who indicate this, hint at it, point to evidence going in that direction, where they're expressly saying such things. And also ancient old histories, a lot of different sources, and also archaeological facts that we brought together and created this composite picture, which we believe to be correct. And even if it is not 100% correct in all its details, the overall scenario that it describes is valid. The different proofs of this, one of the proofs is the foundation, is the finding agricultural estates in Spain, on the southeast coast of Spain. Also the development of silver mining in southwest Spain, and descriptions of what happened at that time. At that time, Spain was virtually uninhabited or very sparsely inhabited. So these Phoenicians came in and they established these colonies, and some of these colonies have architectural features that were only known previously in the northern kingdom of Israel. Also in the names and other indications are that these were Israelite settlers, or they were being directed by Phoenician Hebrews, being directed by Phoenician overseas. And from Spain, after the beginning in the southeast, they also moved to the southwest, then they moved to the northwest, and from there, eventually their descendants moved to the north and moved to the west and moved into Ireland and to Britain. Others of them had already reached into Britain and to Ireland, and also apparently into Scandinavia. On Scandinavian ancient rock art, you see depictions of a seafaring people with Phoenician-type boats and cultural features from the Middle East, intermingling with the natives, or coming to settle alongside the natives. If the natives or they were one and the same people, only there were different castes, different social strata amongst them. So, also we have additional evidence of Phoenicians, that is Canaanites. The Phoenicians came from the area of Canaan. They were known as Canaanites in ancient times. Phoenician is more of a Greek term. They referred to themselves as Canaanites, and that is what they were. And they also set up establishments in Germany, northern Germany. Hamburg, for instance, may be on the site of a Phoenician settlement. Also find evidence of the Phoenicians in England and in Ireland. At that time it was a Bronze Age. Bronze was a preferred metal. The use of iron was also known about, but most of the time they used bronze. They preferred bronze. It's referred to as the Bronze Age, swallowed by the Iron Age, even though you had bronze and iron used alongside each other all the time. At all events, bronze was the preferred metal. And bronze is an alloy made from copper and tin. Maybe 7% to 10% tin, usually tin, combined with copper, go to make bronze. And most of the world's tin was obtained from Cornwall in southwest Britain, southwest England, Cornwall. And most of the copper, possibly all of the copper, a good portion of the copper, was obtained from Wales. The Great Orme Mine in Wales, probably the greatest copper mine that has ever existed. The Great Orme Mine in northwest Wales, not far from the Isle of Anglesey. Iron may have been obtained from Sweden, because apparently the Assyrians were also in that area, or Phoenicians directed by Assyria were in that area, with Edomites also involved as overseeing the whole projects. And this activity of the Phoenicians was recorded by Samis in the 1600, and Bocatus had written along the same lines, somewhat shortly beforehand, and he also said the same thing. And so that is one of our sources. Another source is the Bible. Well, I'm using, for the present, I'm using the complete Tanakh, but the message is similar to how it is found in most translations of the Bible. It says, hearken to this word, O cows of Bashan. Bashan was a portion of the land of Israel. It was to the east of the Jordan River, present-day area of Jordan, and Syria. That was all Bashan. So he's called, and the Israelites once lived in that area. The area belongs to Israel, belonged to Israel in the past, will belong to Israel in the future. The lost 10 tribes will return to that area. As predicted in the book of Zechariah. At all events, Amos chapter 4 said, "Hearken to this word, O cows of Bashan, which are on Mount Samaria." Samaria is another name for the Shomron, for the previous area where the 10 tribes dwelt, in the north, to the north of Judah. "Who oppress the poor, who crush the needy, who say to their lords, bring that we may drink," is speaking to the women of the royalty of Mount Samaria, or the North 10 tribes, who were indulging in eating delicacies and drinking fine wines and so on, and demanding more from their husbands to bring them more to satisfy their needs. Perhaps in some cases this reflects what goes on today, who knows? At all events, it says they crush the poor, who oppress the poor, they oppress the poor, they crush the needy. They say to their lords, the women say to their lords, to their masters, to their husbands, bring what that we may drink. And then he continues in verse 2, "The Lord God has sworn by his holy abode that, behold, days are coming upon you, and you shall be borne on shields." The word for shield in Hebrew is sinot, probably connoting a kind of large ship. "And your posterity in fishing boats." The words translated as fishing boats in Hebrew are siroduga, that is fish boats. It could refer to a type of boat that the Phoenicians had that was also used in Cyprus. It was shaped somewhat like a fish, and it was known as a fish boat. It was quite a large boat, and this was used for transporting captives. "And you shall be born on sinot," that is large ships, "and your posterity," that is acharechem, your children or your grandchildren, those who come out of you, "in fishing boats and fish boats." Then he continues in verse 3, "And through the breaches they shall emerge each woman straight before her, and she will cast out, and you shall cast off the haughtiness," or others translated into the palace. Actually, the Hebrew says Hamona. Hamona has been explained according to the Aramaic translation of Yohanatan as to mean Ha-Menai. Ha-Menai. Ha-Menai, Menai, that is the mountain of Menai. Menai was to the north of the land of Israel, to the north of Assyria, and many of the Israelite captives were taken overland. As we say, the main exile of the Israelites was overland in 3 different stages. They were taken and forced to travel overland until they reached Assyria, and then they were dispersed to other areas of the Assyrian Empire. A portion of them, possibly a small portion, but one that had important significance for us, was sent across the seas to help maintain and establish the colonies of Assyria and their economic ventures. And also indicates that their children will be taken away. This verse of Amos, they'll be taken away in ships. The Great Orme Mine, which was somewhat fantastic, was an enormous hole in the ground. It still exists, you can go and see it. It's an archaeological site. It's a portion of the British heritage. I saw pictures of it. It's quite impressive. They have a whole setup there. They have people to walk you around and explain it to you. And it supplied most of the copper produced in ancient times. And they found that the ones who did it used to use flint tools to scrape out copper. And they had to dig into the ground, into the holes of the mine down below, into tunnels. And they said they needed children. A lot of children labour must have been used. Children of 6 or 7 years old must have been used to do the scraping, to do the mining. So these children were being taken away to work as slaves in this Great Orme Mine. In this great copper mine, which still exists and still can be seen, and the evidence which child labour have been used in ancient times is still there.